One of the other things is that the county is broke. Now, whether they want to admit it or not, they're broke. They're upside down when your assets are below your liabilities. You're upside down. Okay? Trust me. The county wants to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in expenditures for auditors. And I never could get my arms around the concept. I said, okay, I want to be sure I understand it. You're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even get the best CPA in the world, the king of CPAs, to come in here and certify that you're broke. I thought that just makes it worse. There's a suspicion that you're broke now. Now you're going to certify it. My position has been, why not let college interns and a college class use this as a project? I'm not even in the solar system relative to these people, apparently. So it goes back to the cultural problem. A couple of weeks ago on the state level, and I can't remember if it was state or federal, but there was some Medicaid, I think it was state. There was some Medicaid, Medicare fraud. One example that comes to mind was a doctor had been on sabbatical for 6 months, yet was still turning in claims. His office was doing it. My position, you got state colleges. Let these kids get practical experience. Let them go in and conduct these audits. But again, that is so far out there in the solar system that it's. I'm a green-eyed guy from Mars or something. I don't know. But these are just a few examples. One of the last examples I'm going to touch on here is we need to not look at buying new. If you can buy it used, buy it used. You can buy it at the thrift store, buy it at the thrift store. You don't need to get it, and you certainly don't need to pay retail. We can negotiate based on lump sum purchasing power and get wholesale pricing. And we're not doing that. Senator Everett Dickerson said, $1 billion here, $1 billion there, and pretty soon you're talking about real money. There are some other problems that the state has. The state is in the retail business, in case y'all didn't know. The state has almost 200 ABC stores. We don't need to be in the retail business. The state gets the revenue from the sales of those ABC stores regardless. I would sell off those state stores. You're still going to get the revenue and not have that management structure associated with having to be in the retail business. Alabama needs to take part of its money and look at the possibility of have a state-owned bank like North Dakota. In North Dakota, they've had their state-owned bank for almost 95 years. During the good times, during the bad times, it has performed well. It is in the state of North Dakota, it is the depository for all state funds. All state funds. In addition to that, it is a stimulus mechanism for businesses. It's akin to what the Federal Reserve is on a national level. If you look at the number of banks that contributed to political campaigns during the 2010 election, go back and look at the contributions made to the inaugural foundation. They were limited on what they could do during on campaigns. They weren't limited on what they could do for the inaugural fund. There are millions and millions of dollars that flow through various banks. There's no reason why that money should not be flowing to a state-owned or enterprise. I alluded to the tsunami that's facing the state, healthcare. Global obesity has doubled since 1980. I've mentioned that the state is in the southeast, and the southeast is known as a stroke belt. Alabama ranks number 2 in obesity. Number 3, depending on which poll you look at it, but number 2 or number 3. Almost 2/3 of the states in the U.S. have opt-out provisions for physical education. A study recently came out that concluded that obesity is a result of lifestyle, not genetics. Now, what does obesity have to do with all this? Diabetes, heart disease. Just 2 examples. How can we avoid it? We need to put a full court press effort into prevention. Now, none of you folks know me, and none of you. Michelle has met me over the course of several months. But if you can imagine, about 15 years ago, a guy standing before you, 100 pounds heavier than he is, that was me. Now, I exercise, I swim, I cycle. I eat like a horse, though. I tend to eat fairly well. I have my vices just like anybody else. I like ice cream, for example. But we need to put effort into preventive measures, because diabetes, heart disease, just those 2 things alone are going to be very expensive. The federal government's trying to push more and more of the health care burden onto the states, and Alabama's going to have to bear the burden. One of the things that I'm a big advocate of is exercise. Now, I don't misinterpret what I'm saying here. I'm not talking about to the level that I exercise. Keith knows how I am. I'm pretty competitive in cycling, and I'm pretty competitive in swimming. But we need to be able, people need to be able to get out and exercise. And I understand that in some of the rural counties, and some of the rural cities and towns, those facilities may not be as available. But we need to put an effort to get people into those facilities, to encourage it, and to, even when they can't afford it, to pay it. If there's not some facility in their town, that they can go to the adjoining town. But there has to be a mechanism by which we get them there, and that there's an encouragement to be there. To the extent that people are irresponsible and have irresponsible lifestyles, we've got to take a stand that we cannot be responsible for someone's irresponsibility. If you're going to sit around and eat pizza all the time and just be totally unhealthy and smoke, we can't be accountable and held accountable for those irresponsible actions of people. What I call self-inflicted circumstances. Smoking. Problem with medical technology is that we're keeping people alive longer, and we're keeping the unhealthy people alive longer. But we're doing nothing to discourage their irresponsible lifestyle. And we need to be able to do that. Alabama has one of the lowest tax rates on cigarettes, for example. I'm not a big fan of taxation, but if we're going to have to bear a burden, then we need to have a mechanism by which to fund the consequences. I know something about prevention. I used to drink. When I was in college, I was pretty good at it. If they had a class, I would have probably gotten an A. But I haven't drank in almost 19 years now. I used to smoke. I haven't smoked in almost 19 years. 15 years ago, I was walking a heart attack. My doctor kept telling me I need to lose 10, 15 pounds, and I got tired of him telling me that. So I said, finally, I'm going to exercise, and I'll just carry what I got. I'm going to carry it healthily. At that time, just to put things into perspective for you folks, 100 pounds is in and of itself mind-blowing, at least to me. I had a 48-inch waist. I wore a 52 coat, had a 17.5-inch neck. Now my 33-inch waist, 15.5-inch neck. My wife jokingly says that I'm half the man I used to be. I used to say I would refer to myself as being porky. And she would always correct me and say, no, you are porky. But simply put, the human body is very forgiving. If you smoke, your lungs will rejuvenate. If you drink, your liver will rejuvenate. But you have to give the body the chance to do it. Exercise is one of the ways to accomplish that. It revs up the body's engine. It works the heart. Heart's the most important thing we got. Consensus follows action. I heard that relative to talking about Ronald Reagan. And basically it's reward follows risk. And that's how capitalism works. You take the risk, hopefully it pays off, you get the reward. But it doesn't work that way in government. Everything's status quo. There's no risk taking. A lot of the things I'm talking about are risky because they're unpopular. They go against the culture. Orlando Batista said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. Jefferson County has made a lot of mistakes and they've done a lot of lip service, but they've not done any correcting. Sometimes you have only one chance to get it done right. Orlando Batista said that as well. The state of Alabama and Jefferson County, they're out of chances, they're out of opportunities, particularly Jefferson County. But the state is surrounded by surrounded by states that are all in deficits. If you look at a map, every state touching us has deficits. So that is going to overflow to us. We're just not there yet, but it's going to come our way. And when you factor the short-term implications with the long-term tsunami we have coming, it's not a good equation. Now, I'm not being disparaging to any of the prior governors, but just because you've been Attorney General of the state of Alabama, I don't think that prepares you to be the chief executive of the state of Alabama. Just because you've been a policymaker doesn't necessarily prepare you to be the chief executive of the state. The executive branch function is the dollars and cents, the rubber and road, the implementation. Policy is generated out of the legislative branch. The policy doesn't get created by the executive branch. Now, granted, there are executive orders, but the governor's office in the state of Alabama is pretty well limited relative to policy. So, the good news is that we're not broke yet. But we do need to take definitive action. I don't know, as I've said, if jobs need to be eliminated, but I don't feel that jobs need to be cut until we've taken care of the bleeding that exists right now. All the efficiencies have not been recognized, and everything I've talked to you about so far are things I live. They're heartfelt.